And now, from Glasgow.
So, hello, welcome to another brand new pack. This is, I forget the pack number now. Obviously, we get 6 issues per pack, and this one has been split lovely. Issues 27, 28, 29 all deal with the mechanism of the neck, and then the last three stages of the pack deal with something completely different. I'm not going to tell you what they are because I'm going to make you wait till 2 weeks until the next issue. Right, so the parts that we get in this issue are slightly complicated. And when I say slightly complicated, I mean not complicated at all, because you get 3 gears that are exactly the same. So that makes life a lot simpler. And then we get 3 shafts. So the gears are 1450 gears. So someone did explain exactly what it meant. I thought it meant 14 teeth on that wheel and 50 on the other, but apparently that's not it. I'm going to ask a favour. Someone did tell me what that meant, but if they could drop a comment, it would be mostly appreciated. And the shafts are 24 millimeters long, like that. And we are going to need our neck mechanism from the previous issue. Neck mechanism, say that when you're drunk. Neck mechanism stage 1, and it looks like we'll need our little bit of grease that we got from previous stages. So what we are going to do, let me zoom in a bit because there's not an awful lot on such a big table, is there? So you will see that there is a small hole there, and we're just going to drop a shaft into there, and then we are going to place one of these cogs upside down so they're facing, the smaller one is facing down, and that's going to go into there. And we just it's very hard to see, but the cog, the smaller cog there is going to be running along that. So as you can see, when this big cog turns, it turns that smaller one. Now it is asking us to grease the inner cog, so let's get something to apply some grease with. Now it's telling us to grease this smaller cog, but obviously that needs to run along the larger cog. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put slightly more grease than I would normally. You don't need an awful lot of grease on these, just a very thin layer, but I've put a slightly thicker layer for the reason that by the time that's run round a few times and all that grease is transferred, it should have mixed it, transferred all that grease, but it's running smoothly anyway, so I'm very happy with that. Right, so the next step is we now want to place a shaft into that hole there. You can see how this is going, and we are going to grease this cog up in exactly the same way. So a little bit of grease. Don't want to flood it with grease, guys, because otherwise there'll just be grease everywhere, and while nothing will stick, the whole thing will be a complete mess. So normally I am an advocate for just, less is more. But what I'm saying is not so much less is more in this case. So that's going to go into there upside down, and that's going to run along this cog there, which is why we only needed to grease one of the cogs. So there we go. So now when this cog turns, it turns this one, which turns that one. Have I got a marker pen? I don't know if this is going to work, guys. So there's a number on there which I'm going to try and highlight, and there's a number on there. I don't know if you can see the marker I've made. So you'll see that as I turn, so this one will turn that one and that one will turn that one. Is that going slow enough? It's actually speeding it up. So there we go. And then you can see what's coming in the next one, guys. This last remaining hole, shaft goes into there, little bit of grease onto this cog in exactly the same place. Spread that around. Don't worry about getting it absolutely even, because as these cogs go round and round, it will even it all out. So that goes in there so that you might need to wiggle it a bit. So the smaller cog from that one is resting against the larger one on that one, which is smaller cog resting against the larger one there, and the smaller one resting against there. And it's getting hard to turn because it's quite a lot of work for it to do now. But there we go, guys, that's a fully working cog, and that is the end of that issue, or that stage. Okay, so on to stage 28, and we only get 2 components for this one. We've got ourselves a motor, which I'm just going to untie these. They've tied the wires in a knot, which is not my preferred way of doing it, but it's a quicker and cheaper for them than, say, binding it up with a tag. So just give those a gentle tug there. Don't pull it hard, but just want to make sure those are connected. Those wires are actually soldered on. Now, me personally, I have a solder machine, so if these are broken, I could just solder those back on, not a problem. But obviously you would have the right, you know when I make a video, we always get an invader. Hello, you. I may have to make a cut in a moment. I have one cat that if I lift them up and put them back on the bed, they stay there, but this one, she's quite persistent. Stay, sit, roll over, bark. Here she comes. Okay, guys, I'm going to take a cut. So my apologies for that interruption, although we never object to a fluffy thing on our desk. Right, so this is our motor. Like I say, check these connections, make sure they're on properly. Now, what I'm about to do, I'm not going to recommend you doing it because I will not be held responsible for anything that goes wrong. I'm just going to get a piece of masking tape, and this is just for your benefit. I'm just going to test the motor. And then I'm going to get, I've got this, I can't remember where I got it from. Is this from ET? This battery box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug red for red into here, and there we go. And I've used 3 volts worth of battery. It doesn't generally blow anything. And I just want to make sure that motor works, which it does. Look at the speed of that, guys. Is that going to be too much? Anyway, so that's my motor. My motor works absolutely fine. So the second piece that we get is a worm gear. I love that word, worm gear. These are obviously gears, but these are done on a little spiral, so they look like a worm. And what's going to happen is that's going to go onto there, and it isn't a shape, which I find interesting. Which way round does it go? So it goes in on this little flat bits up first. I do find that interesting, that it's not shaped, and it's very hard to put on, guys, very hard. Right, so I don't know how far to push that down. Do we push it all the way down? I don't know. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to push it about halfway down, and I'm going to place the motor into here, which is where it goes. And then I can see it does make contact with the gears, but you see the gears don't make contact in the center of the worm gear. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to push that down a little bit further, but it doesn't want to go. That is really, really hard to put on. Yeah, there we go. So I've just pushed it in a little bit further, and it's almost central. So let's push that in a little bit more. That really doesn't want to go. and that is actually down as far as it will go now. So that is in, yeah, I would say that's now about the right length. Would you agree, guys? So as you've just seen, this motor is going to go into this little holder there, and the gears are going to make contact. Now, I don't suppose for 1 second it's relevant, but on the magazine it has it so that the red wire is more towards the middle and the black wire is further back. Like I say, I don't suppose for 1 second it will make a difference, but that's the way I'm going to place it. And that is it for that stage. Shall we do another test, guys? Because when I moved this, I found that very stiff. It's not going to work as well with all of this open, but we might be able to sort of have a look, because I am slightly concerned that there's too much tension. So that would suggest either that's a very high torque motor, or it's not going to work. So let's have a look. And look, I can see that moves absolutely fine. Can you see that this one's spinning like a rate of knots? That one's slowed down a bit. That one's a bit slower. That's even slower. By the time we get to this cog there, can you see how slow that top cog is going? It's all to do with the transferring of gear ratios, and if you're a mechanic or a physicsy person, you'll understand that a lot more than me. But it's all to do with the ratios. Right, guys, so that is the end of stage 28. We will finish this particular part off in stage 29. So this is stage 29, and the parts that we get is 29.1 servo motor mount. They're calling it a servo motor mount now. We also get a bearing. Now, bearings are generally used to help things run smoothly, because it's low friction movement, so there'll be no heat or no bad things happening to it. We've also got this, which is they've called it a roller. It's just basically a plastic tube. There we go. Then we get 29.5, which is a metal washer. They've called it a washer. We've actually missed state number 4 out, which is a tension spring. So some kind of spring there. And then we finish off with 5 PTP screws. And looking slightly ahead on the instructions, it looks like we don't have any spare screws. We are going to need all 5 of those. Right, so I'm sure there was an advert on TV many years ago, and it said something along the lines of all the things you would expect plus a few things you wouldn't. And I think that describes this stage perfectly. Let me tell you what I mean. So we start off by popping our bearing into the servo mount B. That's not the piece we worked on the last issue, it's this one. And yes, that's a nice snug fit, very nice. That's not coming out, and as you can see, look, it just helps it move. So that's step 1 done. And then step 2, you've got to be a bit careful here, because you've got 3 holes there, and these 3 pegs are going to have to go into that hole. I can't get a good focus today for some reason. I don't know why. There we go. So we've got the 3 holes there. The 3 pegs are going to have to line into there. Plus this peg there is going to have to go through that hole. And we can't trap those wires. So, and then just to make it a little bit harder for you, you can't see what you're doing while you do it. So let's see if there's an easy way. So we'll pop that hole in there first, keeping it straight and level. I think we're going to have to wiggle it. Wiggle, wiggle. I'm not forcing it, especially with those wires. Yeah, that doesn't want to go in. That is struggling to go in. I think everything has to be lined up perfect, and if it's not quite perfect, No, I can see what the problem is. So it's actually that bit there. It's a really tight fit. So I'm going to push that. Yeah, and I think that's in. Yes, that I think I'm happy with. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it another little test. Like I say, I'm not suggesting you do this because I don't want to be held responsible for if you break yours, but it's just for a bit of peace of mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little tiny piece of masking tape. Again, this is mainly for your benefit. I'm just going to place that masking tape on there. Once we plug this in theory, this should all work and it should rotate that. So let's have a look. You guys, anyone who's known me for a while knows I do like to test my electronics before I bury them in the model. And there we go. That's working absolutely fine. It's just that they don't tell us to test it, but this is mechanism of the neck. If we're not actually going to switch it on until we finish the model and it turns out it doesn't work, I've got an awful lot of work to do to undo it all to fix it. Right, so lastly we have got some screws to put in, and they want us to put the screws in, there we go, on the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's start with the corners, and I'm going to just pop that one in almost all the way, just enough, as I call it, just enough to grab, and I'm going to do the opposite corner. Okay, now there's a little gap there which not in properly. That will sort itself out once we screw it in. Now I'm going to check that these wires are still clear. Yes, they are. So I'll pop this screw in next. That makes a lot of sense to me anyway. And I'm going to put this one almost all the way because I don't want it to lift up. There we go. Just enough to close that gap there. So now these wires are quite safe. And then we'll pop this last corner one in. And because this is the final screw of this particular stage, this can go in all the way if it wants to. That's going in very nicely. That gap is closed. So we'll finish these last two screws off. There we go. And as per usual, I'm only going until the screw tells me to stop. I don't need to overscrew. There's no gaps along the seam. Well, always a little gap there. No, that's fine. Okay, no gaps along there, and there's no movement on that case, and that I'm very happy with. Let's do another test just because we can. Sorry guys, I don't know if you can actually see what I'm doing here. There we go, it's whirring away. And there you can see it's moving. So that's definitely working fine. So whatever this is going to be controlling, it's got slow movement on it. But that's all good. Right, so that was the expected bit. Now for the unexpected bit. So we need to take our tension spring and we need to pop our roller in. So our roller is going to end up there. Because this is springy, all we need to do is just pop the end onto one bit, pull it back. Oh, sorry guys, I'm doing that off camera. So you see there's a gap there. Just pop the roller into one bit, pull the spring up, and then pop it into there. So there we go, we've got ourselves a little roller there. Right, now that wants to go holding this with the wires towards us. On the left we'll have these two pegs, and holding it this way so it goes backwards, we want to place the two circles over there but underneath that one, so it's going to come up. Let me double check that. Yes, so this is going to be able to move like that for now. It might get secured later on, I really don't know. And then what we're going to do, this is going to be slightly awkward. We have our washer which is going to go over this bottom peg, and then a screw. I'm suggesting the easiest way to do this is to pop the washer onto the screw, and then I'm just going to start this off by hand, and then I drop it and lose the washer. I don't think we're going to be able to start it by hand, and the reason for that is this plastic is such a good strong plastic, it's quite difficult. Right, there we go, I've just got it in, so I'll finish it off with a screwdriver. There we go. And all this is going to do really is just going to stop that tension spring from falling off. It's held in with the washer, so it's got the movement it needs. I'm not really sure what that's going to do at this stage, but we can see we've got other pegs, so we'll find out. So that was a lovely 3 issues, and unfortunately that is the end of that stage, but it's all starting to come together, isn't it? So yeah, there's the unexpected bit. I don't know what that's for, but unless something's resting on it, maybe something's resting that way and it'll push back. I don't know, I'm speculating, guys. Right, so guys, I hope you enjoyed that issue. That is issues, what issues is that? 27, 28, 29. That is the neck mechanism stages 2 to 4. And in the next video, which will be out in 2 weeks, we are going to be doing, let me find the titles, the base platform. So we won't have so much to do, but we'll have big large pieces. We'll have the main switch and sensor, and we will finish the issue off with sensor 2 and battery covered. And again, there's a nice little surprise coming, so don't miss the issue in 2 weeks time. Take care, guys. Bye bye.